Right.
Get 4 different cultural opinions on what the hell is going to happen with an update, which nobody knows. I'm excited.
Yeah. Same here.
Guys, we need to
So
start some rumors.
yeah. So I think we have started the live stream. Uh, so folks who are listening to us, hello everyone, and thanks for joining this panel on the topic. Just to remind is basically it's with respect to the recent Google update, which is dubbed Google Helpful Content Update, and we are specifically going to talk about what do we think that like what is the place of AI content now with respect to this new update. So we have including myself, we have 4 panel members here. Let me introduce each of us, and what I'll do is that I'll actually ask all of my panel members to maybe introduce themselves. That'll be actually even better, I would say. So Josh, why don't you go?
Okay, so hi everyone, and thanks very much for having me on tonight. It's tonight where I am. It's just after 11 p.m. here in Australia, and so I'm coming at this from running a marketing agency, and we're in the advertising space, but very much got a LinkedIn with SEO and YouTube and all that fun stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the angle where I'm coming at.
Okay, awesome. So, before kind of moving to Brian, let me just check once that if live is actually indeed working, right? So that we do not want to have any glitches. Just give me a second.
Right.
We seem to be good on YouTube, but not on Facebook. Hey, YouTube.
Okay. I see.
How's it going, YouTube?
Yeah. So, so this webinar is going to be recorded, and we'll, in case there are glitches, so we'll do our bit to kind of send it across and kind of advertise in other platforms also. So yeah. So now, if I can ask Brian if you can just introduce yourself and like where you're speaking from.
Yeah, so my name is Brian Cotto. I'm a digital marketing consultant. We specialize heavily in SEO, content marketing, really guerrilla marketing. So anything that it kind of takes to get the upper hand, get the edge on the competition, whether that's online, offline, pretty much you name it. We're based out of Fort Collins, Colorado, and yeah, happy to be here today.
Awesome. And how about you, Brian?
Hey guys, my name is Boan. I'm the director of SEO at Content Distribution. We're a marketing agency that practices something that we call content velocity, meaning publishing a high amount of pages of quality content. In the last 2 years, we've published over 12,000 long-form content pieces for our clients and ourselves. We've reached 30 million organic visitors in total in this period, and drove more than 250,000 page one keywords. And I can say more than 200 different niches and verticals when it comes to type of content, everything across from legal to food for your pet. So that's where we're coming from, where I'm coming from, talking about these things. I'm also co-founder at Rakello.com, which is a SaaS that is a pre-hire assessment for hiring writers. We help other people practice content velocity and reach that high publishing schedule that everyone needs to have a presence on the web. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. So finally, my name is Ankur. I'm the founder of a product called Longshot.ai, and Longshot.ai is actually a AI content research generation and optimization software. So I kind of represent the angle which is kind of under the question wherein that what is the relevance, future, and kind of relationship with respect to the Google's recent update. What does Google think about it? And yeah, I mean, like, this is also important. So we are all speaking from 4 different time zones, 4 different continents. So we hope to represent a very holistic perspective. Okay, awesome. So what I'll do is that I'll kind of start briefly with like a couple of questions I had in mind, and maybe I'll just throw it down, and then any of you who have some ideas may kind of jump in. And this is one of the things I thought of starting. So see, so before actually trying to think about like what is so when we talk about AI content and specifically with respect to AI content, right? So the idea here is that on one hand we understand that kind of a too much of it or an artificial mode of AI content it's very natural to assume that this might have problems, not just problems with respect to information content not being very human like, but also that maybe misinformation being kind of somehow creeping in. So my first question is that let's say there is a do you think that when it comes to so generally speaking, that what do you think that Google's thought or behind this is, like any guesses based on your experiences? So what is it Google trying to do, or Google is search engine trying to do? I
Should
mean,
I jump in first?
yeah, sure, why not? I mean, this is very free-wheeling. Yeah.
So this is all speculation, of course, and it's difficult to talk about quality. I find it interesting that they are calling it helpful. I think it's a really nice way of going around the fact of us discussing what's quality and what's deserving of being quality or not. I think Google has become very good at understanding the context of a certain content piece, understanding what kind of intent it needs to serve. But what I've heard people asking me is, why would how is Google going to detect if something is new here? How's Google going to detect if they don't compare with the existing stuff, and then this algo is going to be so weird? For me, I think the number one kind of differentiator here is going to be the one thing that AI is not good at yet, and that is providing different kind of data. So to give you an example, AI can be really good at doing a descriptive kind of content of what you feed it, but unlike a human creator, there's not a way for an AI tool to give you a new type of value when it comes to like analyzing certain data and then getting conclusions out of it. So to give you an example of what I did this morning with my team, we explored certain resources from academia and other places to get kind of confirmation of the importance of an assessment when hiring a certain role, and found very interesting. We found very interesting data on what that means. Now we're gonna rank our pages on what hiring is about, how you should test people before you hire them, types of tests, and maybe I can get some content from AI about that. But I cannot get conclusions out of the data that we analyzed from Harvard Business Review, right? It may go and catch that table, but it cannot give me a very good conclusion of what that means in terms of intent, what the user is seeing. So I think that's like fact checking is the first indicator.
So you are basically suggesting,
I'd like to hear other people's opinions.
Okay. So from what I understand or what I hear is that you're saying that the research bit, where when it comes to getting data and drawing conclusions from the data, is going to be a human domain, and this is why Google has tried to be very clear that let's say if you have an automated content, artificial content in which is kind of trying to basically take place of what a research based content should be, then it's a problem. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, because I mean, if I'm reading an informational article, I would rather not want to read a speculation. I mean, I would rather want to be double sure, right? So good point. And I would ask others like Josh and Brian, if you want to kind of factor in on this.
Yeah, so I think like Google coming at it from the consumer, the user point of view, being the helpful. They talk about almost like the cliche thing: the marketers ruin everything. So AI content generation is going to be the next spam. They got it on your telephones, you got it on your emails, you got it now on your Google search, right? Is what they're really trying hard to knock out. They want quality, informative, or intent-driven pieces that are going to rank. And if they got to sort through more and more and more, right? They got to try and get that balance right between that efficiency and user experience.
Yeah. So I mean, like, so while I understand, I mean, this is, I would say that this is something which search engine should do anyway, right? Like they should prioritize what their users are looking for. But with respect to, so if I were to ask that what the specific guidelines which Google has given right now in the helpful content update, what, maybe Josh or maybe Brian, if you can jump in on this, like any conclusions you draw from there, like, based on your experience so far, why Google has kind of put in like any speculation rather.
So why they are putting this kind of helpful content update?
Yes,
That's what you're asking. Yeah.
exactly.
So my perspective on this is I think that Google, ultimately at the end of the day, Google is a massive database, right? They're trying to categorize the web. They're trying to provide the most informative, most authoritative content for said XYZ website or
Yeah.
topic, as
Right.
we put it. I think the biggest issue that we tend to look at though is, you know, if you're looking at artificial intelligence created content, again, kind of like Boyne had mentioned that we're looking at, facts. We want to look at topical relevance. We want to look at keyword clusters, and it makes sense to me that if you're talking about a topic thoroughly in its entirety,
Yeah.
then you're going to win. That's where I see a lot of people tend to fail, is that they focus on single blog articles, like, hey, we want to do this little clickbaity kind of thing. We want to rank for a particular keyword. And in most cases, unless you're dealing with a very high quality agency or you're doing high quality content creation yourself, one of the things that I tend to see is that people will do like little one-off articles, or they'll have maybe a handful of articles instead of thinking through it holistically in a cluster, right? What's the entire topic that we're looking at, and how can we speak to that A to Z and anticipate the questions that someone is coming up with as they're reading an article about, say, pet food, right? Thinking through what kinds of pet food are good. Is a particular pet food good for a puppy versus an adult dog? Is there a particular pet food best for breeds?
Yeah.
What kinds of problems do breeds have? And as you start to cluster this, you can become an authority on these kinds of topics because you are talking about the subject in its entirety, as opposed to little one-offs, right? So I think that that's the direction that Google's looking at. We know that they've been moving from strings to things for years, right?
The knowledge base,
Entity-based SEO.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so as we move further and further into entity structures, into entity-based SEO, it's looking at these kinds of things. I would contest this. Like, I'll go out on a very bold statement here. I really don't think that this update is the content killer, is the Panda 2.0 that everyone's talking about. I just don't buy it. I think what's going on is that they're trying to clear out literally all of the garbage that's been then kind of put out there, and understanding that if you're a topical expert on a subject matter, there's reason to rank you.
Yeah. So that's something which definitely did stand out. Their focus on kind of becoming a topical authority rather than sort of one-offs. I'll do is that I'll just take a quick question, and maybe we can come back to this very topic we're discussing.
Let me just
but
do a quick brief, Ankur,
yeah,
before
absolutely.
you
No
ask
problem.
questions. Just a brief comment. I love what I just heard. It's all about surveying the entire horizon of opportunities for you to know whether you can go into becoming this type of authority online if you know what you need to do in order to dominate your niche. Because ultimately, that is the measure of helpfulness. If you have authority to talk about something, that's how helpful you are. If you can just serve the answers to your public for your entire kind of a vertical or a niche, and that's done by analyzing content. If you do have content on the entire range of everything that you need to kind of do, and have really good thought leadership and original content on top, is the way to kind of differentiate. A question that I had while listening to this is, do you think they will be successful in cleaning out the garbage? Or how successful you think they'll be?
I am of the mind that, like, I don't think they're going to be able to completely clear it out, because, really, again, Google's a data hungry monster. They want they want data, and if you can provide that data, even if it is like garbage, we'll call it. I mean, let's be honest. Mass page sites, PBNs, they still work.
Yeah, it's
The thing is like, how well can it be detected? I mean, you look at a variety of the Google services, maps, different search queries, things like that. It's broken. And I think when you look at it from that kind of context, I think that a lot of people, when they read these kind of updates, they get like, oh, it's like the boogeyman, right? Oh my goodness, big Google's coming after us for this. And I think that, in a lot of cases, what ends up happening though is they will be successful at cleaning out some of the garbage, but in my experience, they turn these filters up to 11 right as they come out, and they're like, oh, good lord, we've cleared out all of the actual good stuff as well, and now we see a lot of this kind of garbage rise to the bubble up to the top. We need to take that update, dial it back from 11 to, okay, we'll say like 9 or 8.5, right? So they ramp it clear up, then they have to dial it way back, and we typically see a correction within 2 to 3 weeks of an algorithm update.
Okay, interesting. So those are interesting speculation. What we'll do is that so I think my getaway is that the when it comes to, so you are basically Brian, you're saying that even from Google's point of view, this is not like sort of this is also is a work in progress and some kind of experimentation, and it can even be some kind of signaling, right? I mean, which may not. I mean, like I'm hearing this also, like when I'm listening to you and elsewhere also, that this is, it's not like the algorithm is in place and it might also fail to some extent, and then when it does, then Google does that patchwork thing, right? So but we'll go there maybe after a few weeks when we have kind of data gathered that what actually happened. So what I'll do is that I'll take a quick question, which is something which to be honest, like we have been asked a lot, right? I mean, I think like if I probably lost count of and the question is that, can Google actually detect AI content? So, anybody, I mean, I myself have a point of view on this, to be honest, as a startup, like working in this domain. But I
Start us
mean,
off.
all right. So let me share my opinion. But I mean, feel free to disagree with me, really, right? So I think it, when of course, like there's no like very short answer, but if like the shortest answer I can come up with this, that yes, if it is like if it is very synthetic, in the sense that when it is not sort of reviewed or tuned over by a human editor, a human reviewer. So by which I mean is this, so when it comes to there are some kind of footprints when you actually only rely on AI, right? So most obvious are that factual inaccuracies, right? Those are like a kind of very in your face. And then there are some kind of word patterns which can also be detected. Now, if you ask me, I don't think it's a bad thing, in the sense that, so that when this is a kind of loaded question, because when people ask this question, can Google detect AI written content? Even before asking this, I would say that this is a two-part question. Is that uh, can so Google can detect, but what does it like really mean? Like in the sense that, does it really matter? In the sense that let's say they figure out some kind of AI footprints. So I would say my our understanding so far, like while working in this, is that to some extent Google can actually detect the footprint, but it will be indistinguishable from lots of footprint even by the human user. So for example, let's say if I take the style of writing which, let's say, a particular New York Times author would, right? And there are footprints. If you analyze enough data, you would figure out that they have a particular style of writing. And sometimes AI content systems also are popular AI content systems or APIs can also have that. Now I think but that's not first of all not a bad thing, and second of all, that when you actually use an end product which is giving you an AI content, there are lots of filters and checks and balances, I mean, depending on the product you use, which are applied, which can actually pretty much mitigate it. So, for example, let's say factual accuracy is a problem, as Boyan, you mentioned, right? So, for example, you will probably not rely on factual or research-based content too much, and if you end up relying, then you should be cautious enough to actually fact check it later. You should be, sort of take into mind that, if this is a very factually sort of dense article I'm writing, then am I going enough, precautions to actually, remove those kind of anomalies if they, or sort of misinformation or factual incorrectness which has crept in. So I would say footprints are there, but in a raw API, so to speak, they are there. In a sophisticated AI product, they are first of all resolved. And when it comes to factual inaccuracies, it's in some sense editor's job to make sure that if they are going in that direction, then they should review it, like, for the first, right? The first thing they should do is to review that, right? Okay, so this is my very long-winded kind of take on it. So any comments or thoughts if you have?
Well, a lot. Should
Okay.
should I go?
Yeah, why not?
So I'll give you an example. Well, first I'll give my answer in short. I don't think it's about the question of will it detect AI content or not, or whether it will, whether there will be able, whether the algo will be able to detect this helpfulness or not, and in what way. And for me, it's not a question of whether you use AI tools, as long as it's an AI-assisted content and not just produced. Now, I'll give you an example. So that's my answer. That's my big point. But I've traveled to a conference a couple of weeks ago here through Eastern Europe, and one of the things that I Googled right away when I crossed the border was where can I get a SIM card? Where can I get some internet stuff? Blah blah blah. And I landed on a very over-optimized blog post. I can see that as an SEO. I can also see that it wasn't done by an AI, because I could see the human influence there, because I could see clearly that this writer did not research the culture of this country. It's just like coming from, this writer was coming from a different place. It wasn't feeling like they really understand, how do you approach prices, or how do you approach something else. It was a person from a different continent. It's completely fine. However, I got all of the information that I wanted. I stayed there for a minute and a half. I got served 5 ads, which I clearly was able to see, which clearly is something that Google is monetizing, because it's those types of ads. So my question is this piece of content helpful? I mean, it is, right? And then could it be written better by an AI? You know what? It could have been, if it was, later on kind of reorganized to serve the purpose of what needs to happen. So for me, it is a question of, again, this is like, nobody quote me, please, in news articles. It is a question of, understanding whether, I guess this helpfulness is about understanding whether the intent was met. And I feel like, again, this is a hunch, please don't quote me, is that a lot of pages that serve their purpose and maybe not would never pass the quality thresholds of my team, will still end up ranking well after this update. And it's also dictated by the competition. And I'll end here with a second example. I was getting a lot of DMs on Twitter and LinkedIn talking to my peers who have been starting experiments with AI-generated content where no editing was obviously being done. Sorry, I cannot share those graphs because they asked not to. But these are sizes from 10,000 to 500,000 pages of content that have started acquiring some serious numbers in terms of organic traffic. Now, a question for the rest of the panel would be also, do you guys think that, when this rolls out, and it's like perfectly rolled out, do you think that, those guys that had 500,000 pages on those programmatic AI-driven content websites, do you think they'll drop to zero? I think not, because they took so many shots on target. And I'm guessing there's at least 5,000 out of those 500,000 pages that's answering the intent and being helpful, because no one else is providing a better piece of content. And ultimately, I think it will hinder our analysis, because we're going to get flooded also by these news of people like, oh, I'm totally doing great, Well, you are, but you're just number one right now, even with your drivel content. So I think it would just light up the situation of whatever this big game that we're playing is, which is a zero-sum game, and somebody else has to lose for others to rank. So yeah, that's
so essentially you are saying is that, like, for example, the example you gave was that the content, a huge amount of content which was put forth, and although produced in an automated or programmatic fashion, since it is actually helpful, like as you said, right, this is considered helpful, this is ranking high. So even if it was automatically produced, why should Google bother to derank it just for the heck of it, right? I mean, in the sense that, so this is kind of a like a follow-up question to the earlier question we're posing, is that why would Google bother? Let's say, so there is I mean, somebody said it pretty nicely, is that it doesn't matter that who is the chef, right, if the dish is good, right? So like, what's your take on this? Like, is Google, I mean, maybe going after the chef, even if, like, let's say two dishes are equally good, so to speak, proverbially, right? So maybe Josh, if you can, I would love to know your thoughts on this.
Well, I think it's just keeping that balancing act, because AI content in and of itself, I think that's not the issue. Really helpfulness. So if it is an underserved query and AI happens to be the best thing going, well, Google's, unless they start doing all their own AI content generation as well, to answer all this kind of stuff, then it's just kind of I think starting to get their systems in place where they can track it, where they can get the data around it, where they can start to understand it more and more, just so that they can have a good understanding of what is happening and where the future is going, so that they can.
But let's say they can actually, so just sorry to interrupt here, but let's say Google can actually differentiate between that, is this content produced by in an automated system or human, or like somewhere in between, right? And but somehow the helpfulness, whatever their metrics are, is really high, right? So my question to you is that, would Google still bother? Let's say helpfulness, whatever they consider the helpfulness in this case, is like the best possible it can be. Now, would Google still bother? Let's say they can detect, hypothetically speaking, that it was produced by an automated system. So this is my question, like, and this is a lot of, so this is a question people are asking, because saying, what, like, maybe it's like, it's Google's product, right? So how do you know, right? So it's like, so sometimes these are the questions which are also kind of asked. So but from the industry experience perspective, would you say Google will still bother about penalizing a content, even though it's good, even though it's helpful, it kind of checks all the boxes, but they can, let's say, confidently detect that it's AI generated content? I mean, this was to Josh, but I mean, anybody can answer.
Yeah, well, I think that they're not really going to bother unless they've got something else up their sleeves where they want to take on more views and more attention, and they see an opportunity there for their own systems to take over. But until then, as long as it's helpful to some degree, I don't think it's going to be an issue.
How about you, Brian? What do you think? I mean, any takes here?
Okay, so I'm feeling a little bit salty today. I'm going to throw out some stuff that's probably going to be a little bit controversial here, but I think that the whole idea of Google detecting AI, I think this is just so hypocritical on their end, because if any of us have done ads, dynamic keyword insertion, DKI, right? What is that? That's artificially intelligence created, like, inserted data. It's no different than a spinner that you're going to
even
throw
meta
in
description.
Now,
like, you remind me of
exactly. They'll even change your metas, and we've seen this time and time again. Oz has done some tests on that, where they, the number of meta descriptions actually can change, and Google determines what they want to put in there, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a matter of AI, because I mean, Google itself is doing this. I mean, that's pretty hypocritical to say, don't do AI content, but we're going to do it all day long, right? Like you were saying, excessive ads above the fold. That's something that Google has told us, like, that's a poor user experience. Don't do it. By the way, we're going to throw 4 ads at the top of our SERP. We're going to throw an ad in the maps, and we'll probably throw a couple more at the bottom, but that's a great user experience, right? I mean, come on, let's be honest here. Like, that's just a bunch of
Yeah.
Yeah, I
No, I mean,
digress. Um,
so
you
yeah,
know,
sorry, yeah, please go on.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just trying to basically, kind of hack in that, you are absolutely correct. This is one of the things which, like Google being in some sense, AI pioneer, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this definitely is one of those things which probably is kind of trying to signal to folks who probably are using AI content in a very, like, crude or sort of run of the mill fashion, right? So
yeah,
because at the end of the day, it's like, you are in some sense trying to go against what you preach, right? When I think of Google or Google search engine, so yeah, and also one of the other things is that, there has been lots of, talks about since last week about AI content upgrade. But I think the bigger issue, which we at least feel, is that, which I think is more important than this, and you actually had already pointed out, was emphasis on topical authority. So basically, folks who are writing content of every type, right? Like, like having no sort of particular domain authority, that might be a question, right? Those I would say. So, for
yeah,
example, I would think like this. I mean, I mean, again, I am kind of also guessing here, but I would say, when I pose this question, when, like saying that, let's say there are two content pieces, both are equally helpful, one is written by AI content, other is not. I would say that more important than not, uh, more important than that, the question that whether this particular one content piece belong belong to a domain which was considered a domain authority, which is considered a topical authority, matters more, right?
mhm,
Uh, compared to, let's say, it was a one-off thing, somewhere written, although helpful, but did not really contribute to the, domain authority of that particular domain in which it was written. So that's how we are reading it, really. Okay,
yeah.
so I think, Boyan, you want to jump in? It feels to me. So
What
please.
was your last question? No, I didn't want to jump in.
Okay. Sorry.
I just
Yeah.
want to
Okay.
add
Yeah.
some more salt to the saltiness that Brian
Nice.
put
Well,
in.
and I'm
That's
looking.
all I'll do. That's it.
No, Brian was basically calling out, like, that Google being themselves in the business of actually AI content, in the sense that they paraphrase
Yeah.
things and, do all those things.
Yeah,
So does it really even make sense for them to call out AI content in the first place, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Well,
So
okay. To be fair, first of all, they didn't. They did not say AI anywhere. They did say people 15 times, and I counted it in the original blog post. So I guess we know what this is about. That's number one, to be kind of fair. Number two, I think it's a very so I'll give you kind of my big picture on what I think about all of this in terms of producing content.
hmm,
You need to you need to have a really good setup of your project documentation and the understanding of the niche and everything that you need in order to create really strong TL. Then
hmm,
you need to hire for a team that can understand how to create content according to everything that I've just mentioned, plus understanding the research that they see from competitors while they're producing content.
hmm,
Two and a half, it doesn't matter if you use AI assistant content. What if you have this huge content plan of 1,000 pages and you need help to create outlines? You need help to, drive your writers to a place where they can produce more. You need to enable your team. It doesn't matter if you use AI tools
yeah,
or not.
yeah, yeah,
Three, you end up publishing a piece of content that can, my opinion, at least for now, cannot be detected, and it's irrelevant whether if it's detected that's been generated, if
hmm,
it's curated, produced in a way that is a quality piece of content and ends up on the web like that. It doesn't really matter. Like,
hmm,
again, I don't
yeah,
think like the mass the tools that are available for like kind of the masses here for all of us. What I mean
hmm,
is they're not still yet capable of producing that higher quality content at all. Like, not about fact checking or just about data. It's about drawing conclusions from the data itself
yeah.
or whatever the previous things are,
Right.
because right now it's not yet there.
Yeah.
So
So,
I
Boyan,
sure I
representing
get
that
your
tech.
kind of
Yeah.
angle, but I don't think it's a question of, I'd love for all of us to, in 3 years' time, everyone
Hmm.
has either a proprietary or is using a commercial AI tool to
Yeah.
produce content. Like, I would love that. Then there's
I see a future like that.
a clean slate of us competing in terms of like proper added value. There's no more regurgitating of whatever someone else produced somewhere.
Yeah. No, so I mean, see,
To dovetail on what you're.
so I'll just quickly add one thing, Brian, and then over to you. So
Yeah.
you know, like kind of in some sense representing the AI content, like developers or technical sort of angle to it. Since like from their point of view, so I see, first of all, AI is also kind of massively accelerating, to be honest, right? I mean, like this whole tool ecosystem started less than 2 years back, and we have seen progress there. But one other thing I also notice is that, see, I mean, people sometimes misplace the place of the AI systems in their content process. So I mean, like, for example, they would want to, like, in the first place, like we have had folks, I mean, without of course delving them out, that who have tried to take one content piece, let's say long form piece, and then just rephrase the whole piece like in one shot. I mean, of course, if you do such things, right, this is I mean, this is not going to last very long anyway. Like even today, it kind of worked for some time maybe. So I think it's like, I mean, I would even say that, let's say, a tool old enough like Grammarly, like what are they? Are they not AI assistant? I mean, they of course are not AI generation system. They are, I mean, in some sense could be said, like, but then, so I mean, I would say that they are, Grammarly has actually improved the web, hasn't it? Because Grammarly has kind of, people, I mean, assuming a lot of people do use Grammarly or something like that, has actually enabled people who are in some sense grammatically handicapped to some extent. Maybe they have a lot of ideas, but they have not, they may be lacking in grammar skills, but still kind of I mean, people like me, right? I do not come from a native English speaking country, so I mean, this has helped us a lot. So that's my honest take. This is the place. There is a place of AI writing assistant. It's not going to be one shot. And if you do that, then I think it's a problem. I mean, without, there are some products which might kind of oversell this, right? So I think that is, like, I would say that even from the technical perspective, in the sense of that, from AI products perspective, there has to be that responsibility and that clear messaging. So yeah, sorry, Brian, you wanted to say something here.
No. I think that what I was going to say dovetails into the last two comments perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the purpose of AI is to be an assistant. It's not to be a push button solution where you just click go, let it run, and
Yeah.
it just starts spinning out, content left and right. Looking at the chat here, we have one of the comments here from Chris about, is it Google counting attributes or can it actually read? I agree with his comment that it can count. It looks for these particular key elements, these keywords in particular places, and that's where AI can really help out. Like, it can analyze much quicker. No different than, I mean, let's go a basic computer calculator, right? Calculator can do complex math that takes humans a lot longer to do. Same thing with a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
It can tabulate, it can calculate that kind of data much quicker than we can. That is really kind of where I see the purpose and kind of the direction of this. You're still going to need that human. You're going to need that human touch point. You're going to need that human curation to say, does this actually make sense from a logical perspective, from a workflow? Like, does this content that we're creating through AI actually make sense and respond to the question? Like, if we, for example, we take Longshot and we're working on our headers, right?
Mhm.
In the AI software, if we're reading through the content and we're like, oh, the AI came up with this underserved particular angle.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's something I hadn't thought about before. And then you can
Mhm.
go down the rabbit hole of, okay, let's answer this question. Oh, by the way, there's another question. As a human, you're
Mhm.
reading it and
Mhm.
say, there's
Yeah.
another question that's brought to mind because of what I'm reading here. Let's answer that question as well. That's how we're developing this kind of topical authority, topical relevance. We're
Mhm.
looking through this and connecting those dots to make sure that it is a comprehensive article. And I think at the end of the day, that's what Google's looking for. With this
Right.
update, I think that what a lot of it entails is looking at the content. Does it make sense? Does it answer
Mhm.
the question? Does it anticipate
Mhm.
the other questions that you may have reading this, and can you follow up?
Yeah, well put. Yeah, so makes a lot of sense. So by the way, like so we have talked about a lot of things. Now, just to kind of crystallize whatever we have talked so far, let's say there is a content team today, right? Uh, what is this one thing they should either change or do, or maybe if you say that, I mean, let's say they are actually using or planning to use a AI content system. So any piece of suggestions there, like, because we also want this to be like a call where there is a takeaway for our audience and prospective audience who are going to listen to this. So so far, like, I mean, any quick takes here that, today if you are going to produce content and interested in using AI assistants, uh, these are the checks and balances you should do, like maybe, or changes you should do. So any quick takes there?
Yeah, sure. I'll say a couple.
Yeah.
One obvious one for me is do the conclusion draw away. Put an A together and get some X, Y, Z over there, and I think you're all good as long as you've got some kind of unique angle to data. That analysis do that analysis, and you'll be right.
Okay. Okay. Right. So any further takes you have?
That this is just one metric. AI is just one metric of many metrics out there.
So I mean, one other thing, like, we were discussing internally and with some other players, and uh, uh, we would like to definitely say is that uh, people who are actually, so to be honest, like our users and from other based on other experience or the AI products also, we know that there are maybe I don't know, percentage of people who are actually trying to game search engines by actually mass producing content. So I would say, let's do not do that, right? I mean, if you plan to do that, then please don't. I mean, in the first place, right? So this is something we had not maybe explicitly clarified, but I think on behalf of the AI writing assistant community, so to speak, I would definitely put it out there. So yeah, that's a very obvious takeaway, I would say. Do You should not use AI content tools without a human editor, a writer, right? So you should not, like, just try to spin things, for example. So, uh, do you want to kind of add on to it, or maybe there's something else we want to move to some other topic? Ivan says that he was actually planning to do that.
I'll just say maybe not do it. Maybe still do it. Oh, there we go. Just watch out how.
Yeah, so maybe you become a case study for us now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what is going on. Something is flickering.
Uncle Google's hacking you. You do realize that.
Yeah, I mean,
They're trying to shut you down.
sounds spooky once again.
You're running an operation here that's not favorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So okay. So after this, another thing I wanted to kind of discuss was that, let's say, uh, like in actual practice of using AI content, let's say, so I'm going slightly more towards, I mean, and I'm not trying to name any names, so this is not the call where we talk about which tool versus that tool. So generally speaking, while using AI content, is there some kind of specific sort of checklist in mind, in the sense that like, once you have produced a content, it's a 1,000-word piece, uh, is there any heuristic, for example, how much AI content you should have generated? I mean, or is there nothing like that at all?
I'm gonna
Again.
say go all in, all AI content, human edited. Like, I think that's the thing at the end of the day. Like, if you have a human editor, or you're actually looking through this logically and saying, yeah, this makes sense. Like, we would take out this paragraph. You would redline particular elements of it. I think that would be. I personally think that's okay. We have content that is 100% AI generated that is ranking quite well because of that, though, and it's. I guess that's not a completely fair assessment to say it's 100% AI generated. The content is majority AI generated. We've gone back through, we've curated it, we've made sure that, again, facts are checked out. We've looked at the, content, made sure it's a logical flow. I don't see any problem in that. And the data that we've looked at for pages that are actually ranking based on AI content, we're seeing that through and through. That, as long as you have it properly edited, doesn't really matter.
Does it depend on the any niche also? Is it something which can be said
Word of a
generally, or
I think even in the YMYL, like let's go like super, like very
Hmm.
data driven. You're talking medical, legal, things like
Yeah.
that. I think AI content still is fine as
Hmm.
long as you go through that human editorial process.
Hmm.
As long as you're checking those facts, as long as you're not just again push button let it run, because AI will start going off in little tangents and kind of off into the weeds
Hmm.
that here's just some random things that will pull up. As long as you're clearing that out, as long as you're properly curating the content and using the AI for what it is, it's a tool, right? It's
Hmm.
not your end all be all solution.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I think
So
even in YMYLs, you're okay with that.
yeah,
We've seen
I'll
that.
actually share an interesting sort of piece from our experience. So like one of our sort of users are basically a media organization, right? And they produce
Mhm.
tons of various types of content, including news content. Now, of course, it's up to their discretion. I mean, I'm not saying that they produce news content using AI, but since the tool is at disposal, they can, right? But and it's up to their discretion to use the tool in whatever fashion they want. But when we suggest them, like when we take calls with them, like they have a lot of team members as users. So so we actually have strongly suggested them, please do not use this for news, right? Because I mean
Mhm.
the for the very reason that and this is also one thing I think I would like to call out, because some few users were actually trying to use AI content for very current sort of changing scenarios, which is the weakest or the worst thing you can do, because of two things. It's not just about it's not just about how you write, but also about by definition AI is going to falter, because it will not have access to every day's update, right? The way AI today works is that it is trained on trained on some previous data, which is not real time. And in a domain we
Mhm.
are working with the information, for example, let's say I mean a very weird and maybe a funny example is that, let's say you are trying to write a some kind of commentary on a like a live match using AI content, right? That might not be a great idea today, right?
Who is attempting this? I want to meet these people. Maybe
Yeah.
hire them to write content. There's some creative stuff right there. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
what does the AI come up with?
AI will
Uh,
come up with things you probably I don't know, it'll conjure up things, right? So it will, and it might even sound
short to
plausible
win
to
sixth title.
yeah.
The NBA's changed
Mhm.
forever.
Yeah, so I mean, this is see, the one thing I just mentioned is very obvious to most people I know, but then for the sake of being like super clear about it, current affairs and news is something which you should stay away from. I think I can confidently say, since till about next, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and then we won't know what happens. So yeah, so this is my kind of very like a black and white take here. Okay, so apart from this, like let's kind of slightly changing gears a bit. There's another thing which also was highlighted in the Google's update, was about increased focus on is your article, let's say up. So there were two things which kind of stood out for us, which might have like either direct indirect relevance to how the content is generated. One is of course topical authority, which we touched upon, and then another thing is that how is your article actually answering queries, and how well it is answering. So I mean, this is not a surprise to anybody who has I mean, this was always there, right? But now Google has slightly more kind of explicitly and maybe clearly put it. uh, does this change how the content will be produced, or do you think, or is it recommended to do some changes there, answering queries bit? For example, should you look at like what people are actually asking, something like that? I don't know.
Short answer from my
Well,
side: I
Yeah.
won't change anything in our process.
yeah,
Uh, it's
yeah, same
because
here.
yeah, it's where everything that I've said. We're not
Hmm.
looking at how many words there are there for other people. We're looking at how many words do we need to answer the intent of the targeted, queries that
Hmm.
we want to rank for. We always, before we try to write any topic, we cluster our keywords per page, so we know exactly what we're trying
Yep.
to target and answer. And then, trying to hack stuff by just loading, the content with whatever type of optimized for search engine, as Google called it, just does not make sense in our process. Never has, and in that way, this is not kind of a different or a new guideline in my view. What I've read as something we have been following for a very long time.
I see. So lots of, just a quick point there. If not, like even the big SEO tools, or so to speak, give guidelines where that they would suggest using of a keyword based on the SERP analysis, right? Now this is also something which is kind of mentioned in the Google's updates. And like for example, there was a discussion around that is keyword, like keyword count, how many keyword you should use, things like that might lose relevance. Do you agree with that assertion? Like, so there are some conversation chatter around this particular take that this implies that recommendation therein that you should use this keyword because this has been used, you include which is determined using a SERP analysis, that how many times you should use. So that kind of thing is going to lose relevance, at least to some extent. uh, Agree, disagree, somewhere in between.
I think it's always been about the user's intent, and what we're doing when we are clustering keywords and looking at SERP is you're just looking at kind of averages that have worked to just give you an understanding if yours is going to be likely to work. But if you're answering and you're being creative about the intent and looking forward in how you're writing the article, then I think you're going to be doing well.
Okay, I see. Right. Okay. Brian, how about you? Any takes there?
Yeah, I see it as gap analysis, really, more than anything. Like you look at AI content, it's going to tell you where your gaps are. Where are you missing? What are you not talking about that the competition is? And if you can take what they're doing, answer those questions, answer that query, add to it, and make it better. I mean, we'll look at like, an enhancement of what's already there. I think that that's kind of the direction that I'm seeing it go.
Okay.
It's not necessarily something to just generate content.
I see. Yeah. So we also agree with that. To some extent, like we would at least think that keyword infesting, just kind of dumping keywords which were kind of popular using a SERP tool or something, is going to diminish. And this was all, I'm not even suggesting that this was a good practice in the first place, but then
no, it's
just
terrible.
a pure,
it should never existed at all. It's just awful. Like I'm happy that where the updates went from some previous time. Like yes, I still believe we're in kind of keyword centric situation when it comes to SEO, and it's fine. But that's a map. That's a map for you in terms of where you need to go. It's not something that you need to utilize. It's you surveying the entire horizon so you know where to kind of maneuver. And as soon as it becomes, this thing of, I need to like stuff it here or there, it makes no sense. It's only, the things that we say still that are highly operational and highly kind of dumbed down, I would say, in terms of like checklists with keywords, which I do still because it's the easiest way to convey certain things is because I am certain that this main keyword that I'm targeting, or it's one of their main variations, is something that simply has to happen in order to cover that topic, not in order to have the keyword in the title. Like I want my writer to have a keyword in a title because they're going to be answering the intent better if they do it creatively. I don't want them to have it in the title because it should be there. The same goes for the rest of the keywords that you're targeting. It's about the topic that you're writing about. So I'm happy that we're moving away from whatever you want to call it.
And in the similar vein, I think Google has also called out, trying to judge how long your content should be, right? I think they mentioned that even that is a metric they do not maintain at all, and people do guess it, second guesses. But then, so to be fair, right? In actual practices, we have seen that people being a bit, attentive to this metric that, how many words should I write it for this topic, right? In order to rank this. So
that's super random, by the way. I'll give you an example of like we've ranked so many pages of content with long form where the look of the SERPs on the first page was maybe 4 long form articles and then 4 landing pages or hub pages.
Right.
Guess what landing and hub pages have? They have 10 or 15,000 words because there's a dump of things there that's still ranking from 2007, and that's not what people are searching for. And if you do just analysis of a median or an average word count, it will give you nothing. It will say, oh, you need 7,000 words. Makes no sense. So it's the analysis of the structure of the content.
Yeah. So
and
since we have
least you can, the shorter you can answer the intent, the better.
Yeah, no, that's definitely there. And I mean, I also read that it also depends on the topic really. I mean, some topics by nature are going to be a bit involved. Let's say you want to read about the recipe of something, right? I mean, then of course you want your audience to be it should be a detailed oriented. By definition, the answer is not going to be in one line. It cannot be a short answer type sort of query. So it kind of depends on the niche also, and this is something which is still nebulous, because of course we know that some things are going to be where the answer lies in the whole article in entirety, whereas others where it can be crystallized to a line also. Just to finally touch upon an aspect of what we interpret as automated content, and we have not yet talked about much, is programmatic content. So there is also a chatter about, when I say programmatic content, now I differentiate it between AI content directly, because I'm basically talking about content which is where you mass produce content, maybe using some kind of templatizations or something like that, right? And you therefore kind of maybe increase your topical authority in one shot. But so people are also interpreting the statement on automated content uh, to imply programmatic SEO and stuff like that, right? Like, let's say you are in a particular domain, and then you somehow know maybe 5,000 keywords of this domain, and you somehow templatized way or whatever produce content on each of these and have 5,000 blogs maybe in a month, right? If you do that, is it a good practice? Was it a good practice, or is it going to be a good practice? So again, very loaded question, I know, but any takes here? I know I can actually guess what Brian is going to say, but I mean, please, I'm still.
I talk too much.
No, no. I mean, I meant this as a compliment. I'm just saying that,
Oh no, I'm just that's simply the truth.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So would love to hear any takes on this programmatic SEO relevance to the updates.
Yeah, well, they're probably going to rank maybe on some of them but it's like going into a casino. You're going to win a couple of things, right? But at the end of the day, long term, you're not going to be there. If you're getting a lot of traction, someone else is going to pick up on it and put some better quality content there.
Yeah, but so is it not like a signal also to Google? Let's say you are producing, let's say a few hundred or few thousand articles, let's say in a very short span of time. Maybe the content is good, right? Is it still, if it is slightly templatized in the sense that and which programmatic SEO people do practice, right? I mean, of course they cannot produce the whole aspect of programmatic element of SEO, is that where you have templatized certain portions and then kind of producing it, mass producing it. Might be an editorial element to it also. So now is that under attack, or is that under some kind of check, so to speak? Brian, your take, if I may.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can answer this one thing, and then unfortunately, I do have to go and get my kid to school here.
Yeah.
But yeah, my take on it is that, yeah, you could potentially templatize certain parts of it, but at the end of the day, I think that as we've to kind of put a bow on everything that we've talked about here, I think that it really does come down to that human curation. You can templatize certain portions of it, but unless you have that human editor, like the content is going to fall flat, plain and simple. It's either not going to have the user metrics, the engagement, things like that. So,
but I see. Okay. So I think since we have just crossed the 1 hour time we had kind of estimated, so what I'll do is that I'll kind of wrap it here. And this was a great talk. I mean, I personally, learned many point of views here, and we'll put it out. We'll share it, the links and all. So I mean, the takeaway I get is that it's not about AI content. It's about like how you use it, and then which was already the take. I think a lot of serious people, I hope, knew about it, but we hope that we attempted to kind of with the help of few examples, with the help of each of our discussing, kind of we're able to crystallize it even more, right? So I hope that was the purpose of the call, and I would like to thank all of the panelists, and taking our time from very different time zones, right? So that's an achievement, really, I mean,
That was
and
super
what
fun.
I, yeah, yeah, same here. So thanks, Josh, Brian, Boyan. So hope to connect you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you online. Let's
Excellent.
continue
Thank
the
you.
chat. Yeah. Bye bye.
Absolutely, absolutely. Bye, 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 everyone. Bye, everyone who attended.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.